Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? I wanted to film this out in the shop, but the lighting is going weird and the image just keeps hopping. So here we are. I went to go see The Wild Robot yesterday. Fantastic movie. Chris Sanders, the director, he did How to Train Your Dragon. He did Lilo and Stitch. He's done a bunch of other projects in that vein. He knows how to tug at the heartstrings, how to give a story edge while still keeping it accessible and entertaining for old and young audiences. The last time I took my kids to a movie was that Paw Patrol one from last September, and as I've said before, that was tough to sit through. But this one, oh, just perfectly enjoyable across the board. It's based on a novel by Peter Brown. I read it in 2018. I can't remember when it came out, but I read it in 2018, and I remembered the basic plot. It's set in a technological heavy future, not like space age or anything, but smart technology is freaking everywhere. Humans live in programmed and pre-planned cities, and the sea levels have risen. The Golden Gate Bridge is underwater. Coastal cities are underwater. That kind of thing. I remember there being like hints of environmentalism overtones to it, but not like aggressively prevalent, like it was trying to beat you over the head with it. It was just part of the world building. And Roz, the name of the robot, who's the central figure here, she's crated up and she's on a freighter ship that is headed across the ocean. A typhoon hits it, sinks the ship. A bunch of these crates wash up on a shore full of wildlife, and she gets activated and she starts learning the language of the locals, which she's programmed to do. She speaks all these languages, but she can also go into learning mode. And because of that, she's able to figure out how the animals talk. There's a couple of cool moments later in the movie when like other robots show up, and they don't like make a big production out of it, but they just establish that when the robots are talking to Roz, the animals can't understand what they're saying. It's not like subtitled or anything. It's just there. There are little details like that all throughout the setting of this that just make it clear that they put a lot of thought and effort into it. All of the technical stuff was handled perfectly in this movie. The animation was just beautiful. The colors, light values. There were individual, it almost looked like brush strokes when they were painting leaves and pieces of the landscape and stuff, but it still moved convincingly in like a 3D computer animated setting. I loved the creature design for all of the animals as well as for Roz herself. It always kind of like insists that you look at it. Like you're watching, you're seeing how like individual parts of her move, and she moves kind of like that robot from The Incredibles, where she can like, kind of go in any direction. She's flexible, she's versatile. She feels very much like a modern tech product. Let me do whatever it is that my user needs me to do, but at the same time, like the animators knew how to integrate that into the setting and into the story. While she's figuring out the ropes and learning what life is like on the island, she stumbles around. She accidentally steps on a nest of geese, kills the mother goose, and decides that she needs to raise the gosling, who's the runt of the litter. I was talking to my wife after the movie, and since she's read the books recently with our children, she said that they added a few things in, but not necessarily like, hey, let's throw in 3 more storylines like they did with the Beetlejuice movie. It was more just augmenting stuff that was already there to make the script like more complete, more fleshed out. The characters were all really well done, and holy cow, like the voice cast on this thing was loaded. So Lupita Nyong'o is the voice of most of the robots. Like there are other robots that pop up. She's Roz, the main character. Pedro Pascal is a fox named Fink. He quickly becomes friends with Roz and kind of explains to her how things on the island go. I wouldn't have known that was Pedro Pascal. Maybe I'm just Mandalorian brained, but I wouldn't have guessed that was his voice. Mark Hamill is in there. He's got kind of a smaller part. He plays the voice of this giant grizzly bear. Most of his body of work is in voice acting. Matt Berry, he's the voice of this beaver, and you can tell immediately when Matt Berry is in anything. He has one of the most distinct voices in the business. Remember at one point, like they call him up, like they need his help, and they're giving him some line of nonsense, and he says male bovine excrement. I was like, okay, it's gonna go over the kids' heads, but that gets a laugh out of me. it's the sign of a good animated family movie if like everybody can enjoy it for what it is, but if there are little like gems in there for the parents to enjoy that aren't also like massively vulgar double entendres, it's like okay, you hear him say that, you know what he's saying, but they're also fitting it friendly like into a kid movie. I'm sure there were a couple of others. I could have sworn I heard Shia LaBeouf's voice in there, but I looked up the cast and he's not in it. Anyway, man, like there's so much movie in this movie, but at the same time, it's not overly long. It's only about an hour and 40 minutes. Roz has to help the animals through the winter time, and then she's also got this return to factory beacon that she keeps like deciding to set and not set and stuff. There are reasons as to why like she's quarreling with her programming, and her personal arc is about her becoming emotionally invested in the success of this task. She has to teach this goose how to eat, swim, and fly, and she uses all this like science and techie stuff to figure it out, but she becomes emotionally invested in his well-being. There's an arc to her developing her programming, which this is kind of a common theme in robot stories. Like, you know, robots who want to become human, or through their programming they start to develop maybe bugs, but also loopholes. And obviously, these robots were not designed to interact with nature and with the wild, so you know, her time on the island ends up becoming invaluable to the tech companies that built her. And by the end of the movie, like she does have to square with the fact that the company that built her will want her back. There's also a really moving scene with the geese going through their first migration. The whole point is that she's got to get him ready for it, get the little gosling, his name is Bright Bill, ready for it. And there are a couple of montages, but it's all earned. Like by the time this movie was done, I just kept thinking the way that this was written and executed, everything felt earned. They could have easily written some emotionally impactful lines that they just wanted to put in the script. And then, okay, after enough time, we can say this, after enough time, we can say that. They made it all matter, the way that the characters interacted with each other and all of that. It was just a superb piece of writing and execution. Just nailed that on both fronts. Before I go into too much more detail about all of that, I think I was probably around like the halfway point of this movie when I thought like there's a very interesting juxtaposition between Roz's arc and something that happened recently in the news. Elon Musk unveiled this new product at some like Tesla Expo called Optimus. They're basically the robots from iRobot. And whatever you want to say about what robot technology can or can't do, like I said on Twitter, remember that a year ago, AI art generators couldn't draw hands and fingers. And now they are passing around convincing photos of fake stuff from the Hurricane Helene survivors. So technology improves at a much faster rate of speed than humanity does. And that's going to be very disruptive for established industries. But even worse than that, it's going to be disruptive to human life as we know it. And defenders of this technology, they're going to say, well, you know, the internet replaced a lot of libraries and commerce and stuff. Like it was disruptive, but it was overall better for the economy. As maybe it was. It doesn't in every way mean that it was better for people. I don't even know if it was necessarily better in most ways. Are we more united than we were when communication was more in person and more face to face? And I'm not saying did we all agree on the same stuff. I'm saying were we all better to each other on a wider scale, or are we more divided through this use of technology that provides an easy and comfortable barrier between us and our fellow man? What's that going to look like when people can buy robots? When corporations can buy robots, what's that going to do to the labor industry? Tech has already been very disruptive to the labor industry in some good ways and in some bad. It needs to be acknowledged on both fronts. One example I'll give is that I'm a truck driver, and a couple of years ago, I'll say like 5 years at this point, the DOT mandated that any federal motor carrier, like anybody who operates over a certain weight and all that, if you're subject to hours of service regulations, you can no longer keep paper logs. You've got to do it all digitally. That's a law that's passed down. which is pretty sweet if you're the tech company who owns the devices and the software and the tech support and the politician that's forcing you to buy it all. It's not so great if you're the motor carrier that has to pay thousands of dollars for units to go into your trucks, and then your overhead increases and you've got to pay for tech support and customer support and software updates all on a regular basis. Every time this company decides they want to make more money, they'll just release an update and say, hey, you got to buy it and this thing will be bricked in 5 months if you don't. That makes the carrier's cost increase, and that makes them pass that charge on to the customer, and things just get more and more expensive for us here on the ground, and the few people at the top just get to commoditize all of our interactions and all of our performance and monetize the heck out of everything. This technology, no matter what it's used for, good or bad, will be another layer in between real people. And when it replaces a significant portion of the labor force, what are those people going to do? Food for thought there. I've had some people who are observing the illegal immigration crisis in the United States say that, well, the government's saying that we need to import these people for labor because there's a labor shortage in America and unemployment is at a certain rate and so on and so forth. It's like, well, if we replace all these with robots, is the illegal immigration going to stop? Whole other issue. Personally, I believe that no, because it's not about replacing labor, it's about replacing an electorate, but I digress. Anyway, with all of that going on, I think there was an undercurrent of things in this movie, in this Wild Robot movie, that posed a very interesting and moving question, and that's that when all of these otherwise meaningful things, labor, community interaction, have been replaced by technology, what's left? And you kind of get some answers and some very good discussion points when you drop a technologically advanced robot into a wild setting and she has to play by the rules of nature. There's a scene about halfway through the movie when a massive snowstorm hits for the winter. It's worse than it's ever been. And it's so bad that even the animals that have gone into hibernation are feeling the cold, and some of them are going to die off. And Roz decides to go and rescue all of the animals that are hibernating and freezing to death and put them in this giant shelter that she'd built for herself and for Fink and for Brightbill. I thought, okay, emotional moment. A lot of the animals on the island have referred to her as the monster, and this is going to be where she wins them over, and that's it. Like, my writer brain was predicting that as the story beat, because that's the way animated kids' movies work. And then all of a sudden, all of these animals start attacking each other because she's putting predators and prey in a box and expecting everybody to just get along. Nope, they're warm now, they're hungry, and the next phase happens. And she gets up and she has a discussion with them. And you'd think, okay, this is going to be some kid-level thing where they explain, oh, you've all got to get along, or you can't start eating each other. You got to do like Madagascar. Everybody go eat fish, because we haven't animated those to be anthropomorphized. No, like, she explains, like, you've all got to do what you need to survive. You're all operating on survival instincts, but while we are in here, we need to have a truce. And I thought, that right there is where civilization begins. There's the concept. There's the motivation. Everybody needs to survive. And if everybody needs to survive, then we've got to figure out what that looks like. We need to agree on certain things. When do we do this? When do we not do this? I thought, okay, perfect. There's an idea. It's about the point of life. How do we make this work? When you've got technological and governmental oligarchs teaming up to say this is the way things are going to be, and the masses here on the ground just get interrupted by that constantly, you're going to end up with a disagreement. You're going to end up with a lot of warm predators and prey all living in the same box and tearing at each other. We've got to figure out how to agree on this and how to make it work. I'm curious what that's going to look like. I'm going to cap this all off by citing a book I've mentioned before on my old podcast. It's called Rossum's Universal Robots, written by the Czech author, I hope I'm saying this right, Karel Čapek, or Čapek perhaps. This is the origin of the word robot, which is from a particular Czech dialect, I believe, because even though there are only 10 million people in the world that speak Czech, it's a European language, so of course there are still dialects and nuanced meanings of things. The word robot is derived from a Czech word meaning labor, but apparently there's a nuanced meaning where it's also about drudgery. And in this book, it's really a script for a play. There's a company called Rossum's Universal Robots that builds robots. They're not machine-based, they're organic-based, but they're basically synthetic humans, whose primary occupation is to do labor, specifically drudgery labor, the kind of stuff nobody enjoys doing unless they're doing it for a lot of money. Kind of like what I do, but I digress. Ultimately, the robots rise up. Some of the humans become sympathetic to them, and there's a big arc in the middle. And by the end, there are two robots, one male and female, kind of like a robotic Adam and Eve, where one of them starts to break down, and the other one's like, "I'll give anything to keep this one operational." And he has this spark where he realizes that he's got love, he's got emotions, he's got values that he places on individual people and not just concepts. And he starts to understand what it is that makes people human. As troublesome as it may be that very disruptive technologies are coming down the pike, I think we can have confidence, at least, and optimism in the willingness of humankind to do well and to do right. That doesn't mean to sit back and wait for it easily to happen. We have to live more deliberately. That was another undercurrent of this Wild Robot movie. If everything's pre-planned in your life and technology is everywhere and makes everything easy and replaces your labor and plans out your leisure and all of that, what are you doing to give your life meaning and fulfillment? Because that actually sounds like a recipe for massive regression. How much effort do you put into your development when all of your needs are provided and you know that for your entire life you will never have to struggle for anything? What would that look like? What gives your life meaning? Anyway, I could go on a couple of other tangents here, but overall, I want to say that this was a fantastically done movie. Loved the story, loved the characters, loved the heart of it all. And the animation, the score, all of the technical stuff was handled to perfection. And I love that there were these undercurrents of deeper things in there that, as I watched this movie over and over again down the road, because I have children, and that's really the test of a children's movie is, can it be played 834 times in my home without me going insane? I can discuss things of greater meaning with them as they were written into the story of this thing. That right there is the mark of a great film. So while it's still in theaters, go check it out. From what I understand, there's a deal with Netflix, so it'll go on streaming in like a couple of months or something. But you will be rewarded for going and seeing this on the big screen. My local theater charges a ridiculous amount of money for nighttime tickets and reclining seats and stuff. There's upcharges and all of that. It's like $18 if you want to buy the ticket online. But if you do the matinee and the regular seat and you buy the tickets in person, it's like $10 a head. So I'm like, okay, you guys might be overcharging for some things here. But I'm really, really glad I saw this in a theater on a huge screen with a huge sound system. It just made it so much easier to appreciate the effort and the detail that went into this thing. So go check it out. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.